Howdy, 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 Steelers Nation. What is going on? The 2022 Pittsburgh Steelers draft is in the books, and we're going to talk about it. I usually like to go on, usually post-draft Saturday night, but unfortunately had major plans going on Saturday night. Busy day all Saturday, which actually after this live stream will be the premiere of the 2022 Steelers draft party video at Heinz Field. So make sure to tune in and check that out. But we are here now to talk about the 2022 Steelers draft class. And it starts with the first round selection of Kenny Pickett. Now, given hindsight, given what occurred with the rest of the draft, you have to wonder, and I do allude to this in the video as well, you have to wonder if they could have got Kenny later in the draft. And if they could have got Kenny later in the draft, because keep in mind, no quarterbacks went until the third round. After Pickett, no quarterbacks went in the rest of the first, didn't go at all in the second, and started going around the third round. So you have to wonder, could the Steelers have taken another player in the first round and then drafted Pickett with their second round selection? Or do NFL GMs, of which we don't know, around the league, considered Pickett to be far and away the best quarterback in the draft, and somebody would have snatched him up in the first or the early second if he was still there, and then all the other quarterbacks that had all the smoke and all the hype and all the things that, went with that, was it Kenny Pickett and then everybody else considerably lower? Or was it Kenny Pickett and then, what I'd be curious about is, did any other teams have a quarterback higher than Pickett? Because if they did, that makes you think that, they didn't draft some of these guys until the third round. And some of these guys, like I remember seeing a mock draft, and it had Carson Strong being going to the Steelers in the second round, and Carson Strong wasn't drafted. So it's interesting to see if it maybe the Steelers the Steelers saw, of all the quarterbacks that they looked around and they saw and they explored, they saw Kenny Pickett far more than anybody else. I mean, he was in their facility. They saw him at practice. He was right across the hall. So clearly the Steelers know something. And I'll lean into the Steelers on this one, that they know a bit more about drafting a quarterback than, say, you or I do. But the question is that if no other no other quarterbacks went until the third round of the draft, could they have selected Kenny Pickett with their second round, or would you feel he was gone? Let me know in the comments down below if you felt he would be gone at that point, or could they have taken him in the second round? And if they took him in the second round, who would they have considered taking in the first? Like, I'd be curious who was on their board when Pickett went. Who would be the 1B behind Pickett? Because it's an interesting thing to consider if they could have got Pickett and one of the, other guys in the first round. But could they have got Pickett, one of the other guys in the first round, and George Pickens, who was in the second? But anywho, let's go through here the draft group by group, line by line. And we start with, of course, Kenny Pickett, the first round selection quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if the Steelers plan and their thing is to win every year, then you have to assume that they are drafting a first-round quarterback to be the starter, to be the guy. So I do think there would be an open competition at quarterback. Currently, I feel that Mitch has the edge at the moment, and that Mitch will have a short leash once he does have the edge. That Pickett will be the backup, and that Mason will be gone. Imagine that. Imagine if you're Mason Rudolph. I mean, I know, look, I mentioned this in several other live streams and other things before. Rudolph had his chance, and it was that Lions game last year. The table was set against the worst team in the league to beat them handily and to show that you were capable of being the guy. And they tied. He didn't have a particularly bad game, but keep in mind he was playing the worst team in the league. What happens when you play one of the better teams in the league? And that's the concern about Mason Rudolph. So I do think Rudolph's out of a job. I really do feel I think Jerry Dulac said something today about him being traded before the start of the season. I can't imagine what they would trade him for, but I think he is as good as gone. And it's basically going to be the three quarterbacks as it stands currently, which is Mitch Trubisky, Kenny Pickett, and the 7th round selection, and I'm going to butcher his name, Chris Oladokun. I don't know how that's pronounced, but Oladokun is going to be the three guys. And unless Mason Rudolph, let's put it this way, if Mason Rudolph gets to training camp, he better have the training camp of his life. And even maybe if he does have the training camp of his life, it's just going to involve a higher draft pick. I think he's out the door. So Kenny Pickett, I'm curious to know others' thoughts on Pickett. I have seen both the very positive and the very negative when it comes to Pickett. Look, at this point, I feel that, he could be good. I'm not as down on him as everybody else is. Now, a lot of people are saying he's the heir apparent. He's going to be the guy that's going to replace Ben Roethlisberger. The question is whether he is, because as far as Steelers first round quarterbacks, they had Terry Bradshaw. And I believe the next one, correct me if I'm wrong here, was Mark Malone. And then Ben, and now Pickett. Was there anyone in the middle there? I'd be curious if somebody was in the middle. But anyway, the question is that when you're succeeding a Hall of Famer, you can't, be compared to those lofty expectations, but he already is. Being the heir apparent to Ben and being the last pick quarterback drafted in the first round since Dan Marino and beating all of Dan Marino's records at Pitt, you have to assume that he's being put on that high pedestal of Marino and Roethlisberger and not to mention the burdens of being a first-round pick. That is a tough hill to climb. If even he's pedestrian, if he's mediocre, if he's not, one of the top quarterbacks in the league, he will just be average at best. Basically, he'll be treated so much worse than if someone that was drafted in, say, the 2nd or 3rd round became an average quarterback in the league. Without the lofty expectations, they would be like an up-and-comer versus Pickett, who has this really, really high bar to clear. And that could consume him. The hope is that, he seems like he's a guy that can handle pressure well, and he's going to have to because he's got the weight of basically large weight on his shoulders. And it'll be interesting also to see how Pickett is compared to the other quarterbacks in this draft. Because normally in a draft, the quarterbacks are I will send you a message on that. But the other quarterbacks in this draft I'll send you a message on that. But the other quarterbacks in any other drafts were people like, Wentz and Goff. They're 1 and 2 in a draft. And so they're being 1 and 2, you can easily compare them. But how do you compare Kenny Pickett to, say, Desmond Ridder, who was the 2nd quarterback taken, and being the 2nd quarterback taken, but not until the 3rd round? So does Ridder have a kind of an advantage? What's up, McBurg? How you doing? Does Ridder have an advantage being the 3rd round? Hey, Braden, how's it going? Hi there. Everybody's hopping in. I appreciate it. But being the advantage of that Ridder was taken in the third round, the pressure's off him, and he can learn from Mariota. And then if he becomes a capable quarterback in this league, he doesn't have the same lofty expectations as Pickett. And then what about Malik Willis? Malik Willis, the guy that was supposed to be the number one guy in this draft that people were mocking as high as 2 to Detroit, falls all the way to the third round with the Titans. And they mentioned how raw he is, how he didn't play in a pro system, how he didn't play against pro defenses, how he didn't play against above-level competition, how he played in a small school. Thanks, Heather. Appreciate it. How he, it's going to be interesting to see how Willis is perceived and how Ridder's perceived in comparison to Pickett. And time will tell within the next few years who's going to come out of this draft class on top. The hope is that it's Pickett, and the hope being that it's Pickett because he was the first quarterback taken, and the hope being because he's the quarterback of the Steelers. That is the big hope with Pickett. Now, with these other guys, I don't feel that they're going to get a chance to start right out of the gate, whereas Pickett will. I think Ridder's going to sit. And I'm definitely sure Malik Willis is going to sit. I'd be shocked based on all I've heard about him being super raw and not playing in a pro system if he would start. I don't think the new quarterback needs a haircut. But I do appreciate you interested in my thoughts. I think the long hair works for him. I do feel that it will but I mean, maybe it's a question for the ladies of Pittsburgh or for his fiance, whether they feel he should have a new haircut. I don't feel that he should, but maybe that's just me. I don't know. I think the long hair works for him as a unique feature, but I could be wrong there. But anywho, his thoughts on basically his determination of what he is going to do versus the other quarterbacks in the league are going to say, or basically it's going to go a long way to determining how this will play out. Now with Ridder, with Willis, with Howe, and Howe went to the Commanders, I think. And one of them went to, or did Howe go to Carolina? Either way, they were going in like the 4th, 5th round, those guys. So if, those guys end up being the best quarterback in the class, then, that's a steal, a bargain. But keep in mind, arguably, and as much as I hate him, the greatest quarterback of all time came out of the 6th round of the NFL draft. So, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But I do think of the rookie quarterbacks in this draft, that Kenny Pickett will get the first chance to start and may start as soon as this year, and may actually get a starting job within the first few weeks, if not the right after right at the start of the season. If he's gangbusters out of training camp, it'll be right after the live stream, Heb. If he comes out of the gate looking better than Mitch, looking better than Rudolph, looking better than Oladokin, if he's going to be the guy. I mean, I think they're playing as it's an open competition. I do feel Mitch has the edge. Thanks for the super chat. I mean, I greatly appreciate that. So I do feel Mitch has the. How do you pronounce that name? Is it VLXN? VLXN? I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely. He has the edge. I do think Mitch has the edge out of training camp. But with, like I said, it all depends on the play. If Pickett outshines him, he will get the start. And if Mitch wins the starting job, struggles, he will lose the starting job very quickly. They will make the change early, within the first couple weeks. So Mitch has to play and play well to keep the job. Now, Steelers second round selection, George Pickens, wide receiver out of Georgia. Didn't think he would be there, to be honest, at the second. I saw some mock drafts where he was coming out in the first. He was coming out right at the first, end of the first. Green Bay, few other teams they said were eyeballing him, and he has first-round talent. The concern there was injury. Injury was coming off an ACL, and you have to wonder, coming off an ACL, would it be, would he come back true to form? Now, a lot of receivers and a lot of other players are coming off of major injuries, and you have to wonder if Pickens maybe slid to the second, because there were plenty of other receivers that went before him. Wide receiver class went wild. I mean, every wide receiver was coming off the board. So we're thankful to get Pickens, because Pickens has size, he has speed. I actually almost put Pickens in my mock draft. Oh, wow, Heather, thanks for the super chat. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. I wonder what bank account it will go into, but I appreciate it just the same. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see, what you're getting out of Pickens, because when I was going to put him in my mock draft, the reason why I didn't put him in my mock draft is because he had kind of a Claypool. He was, size, speed, very much Claypool. And I was like, well, the Steelers really need a slot guy. They need a small slot guy. But what's interesting is that what you hear from Matt Canada and all the other people in the post-game press conference is that the Steelers may switch out Pickens and Claypool as different various slots. So sometimes Claypool could be the slot guy, and then Pickens could be the slot guy. Very interesting to see how they're going to do that, because they're both real big. And when you put those two, or maybe even, when you put Deontay Johnson, those two, and then the fourth round pick, which is Calvin Austin III, who is real small. He's real small, 5'7". So maybe he's the guy that will, maybe play a slot, or he's just an all-around weapon. So it'll be interesting to see how these receivers, but I feel a lot more confident coming out of this draft about the Steelers receivers than I had going in. I was concerned. I was surprised they went multiple receivers, but a lot of, I watched a video where someone was analyzing the Pickens pick, and they were like, well, Steelers don't really need receivers. And I was like, what? They're down 3 from last year. They're down Juju, they were down McLeod, and they were down James Washington. And regardless of whether, how infrequent they use James Washington, he was still a receiver in their system that was down. So, he's gone now, and Juju's gone now, and Ray McLeod's gone. So they had to replace them with these guys. So I'm thrilled with the Pickens pick. Pickens had the lowest drop percentage of any quarter or any wide receiver in college football. That's impressive. I think it was a 2.1%. When you look around at all these other first-round guys that went, all their drop percentages are higher. So you have to wonder if it's the injury that kept him out. But I'm thrilled with the Pickens selection. I like what he can bring to the team. I feel that the dude's going to be, eventually working his way to a starter. Not even maybe a starter, starting 1, starting 2, which brings the question of Deontay Johnson. He hasn't got paid yet, and are they going to pay him? He wants $20+ million a season. That seems to be the going rate for receivers now. I remember when that was the going rate for QBs, but as you can see, my hair is gray. So it's been a while. Now that's the going rate for receivers. So, he wants $20 million a season. Is he worth that? When he shines, like last season in 1,200+ yards, he sure looked the part. The concern is the drops. They got a guy here in the second round who's the lowest drop percentage in college football, and then their wide receiver who wants $20 million, especially at the end of the last season, and more especially the season before, had a bad case of the drops. So you have to wonder, with 2 wide receivers selected in this draft, what that means for Deontay Johnson. Are they going to pay him the money? Are they, kind of doing the old, play out this season, see how it goes, and then we'll send you on your way? It's hard to say. Time will ultimately tell what they're going to do with him. So We move on to round 3. And look, I went to the Penguins game on Friday night. I put that video out earlier today. And Penguins game, I didn't actually see the Pickens selection and the DeMarvin Leal selection until I left the arena. And when I left the arena, the notification came off that it was Bucky Brooks, number 2 defensive tackle, was taken by the Steelers. And I got very excited, because I wanted the Steelers to get a plugger. That's why in my mock draft, I said Jordan Davis. That's why I wanted Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis ultimately went well before the Steelers picked. But I wanted a plugger, someone big up the middle, because I remember them getting gashed left and right up the middle. So when they said, oh, he's the number 2 defensive tackle, I got excited. Then I came home. I started checking the highlights, started checking the details. He's not exactly the plugger that I hoped. He is more defensive end, which, don't get me wrong, our defensive line is aging. They're getting older, but it's not the plugger that I hoped. He's more of an in-between guy. He played all positions on the line. So he played D-tackle. He played D-end. But in the NFL, he's going to be more D-end. He doesn't have that. It's not like Jordan Davis, who was 6'6", almost 400 coming out, which he ended up slimming down to the combine to like 350. He's not that guy. This guy is like 6'3". I think it was like 287. Don't get me wrong, still a big boy, but good for a defensive end, not necessarily good for a defensive tackle. And, the guy that will be shoring up the middle will probably be Alu this season. And you have to wonder about Stephon Tuitt. Is Tuitt going to be, what do we say about what Tuitt's, is he coming back? Is he retired? Is he, I remember that they mentioned in the press conferences the uncertainty of, but that they said he was in the building, and they feel, I think the term was optimistic. Well, optimistic is not certain. It's not guaranteed. Not guaranteed by any stretch. So I don't know quite. They said unless this is a Tuitt backup plan, or a guy that they're grooming so that when Tuitt, reaches the end of his contract, you send him on your way. Is that maybe the reasoning? Because I can get behind that if it's the reasoning. And keep in mind, Cam Hayward's not young either. Cam Hayward's going to be 33? Is he 33 this season, or is he 34 this season? Let's say he's 33. And then Alualu's going to be like 35 this season. So this is probably his last show. But yeah, I would like more of a plugger in the defensive tackle spot. And maybe that's future drafts, because I don't think they're going to be addressing that in free agency. And look, we do need depth on the defensive line. There's no doubt about it. There's depth needed there. So just a matter of whether they're going to, basically what they're going to do. Because keep in mind, that problem is still the problem. And maybe the hope being is that with Tuitt back, with Alu back, and, Montravius Adams and a few other guys that they added here, if they feel that they've shored the line enough to stop being gashed right up the gut by the run. I don't know if they have, but they know more than I do. But as a project, as a young infusion of youth into that defensive line, I'm okay with it. But I was really hoping for a bigger guy to kind of fill that center one. The guy that takes on 2 defenders. That's what I'm looking for. Not necessarily that Aaron Donald is a bigger guy compared to these real beefy defensive tackles, but he can take up 2 defenders. Casey Hampton wasn't a bigger guy, but he could take up 2 defenders. Steelers tried to trade for Fletcher Cox. He could take up 2 defenders. I mean, a mean monster like that. Now, could this guy maybe be that, or are you moving, Cam Hayward to the middle of the middle of the line, and have these 2 ends come on? Maybe that would be the case. But yeah, it's not quite what I hoped. But I mean, I'd like that he was, top on some of the boards. If Bucky Brooks, and I didn't read kind of Bucky Brooks' analysis, but if he's the top 2 defensive end, and that means he either put him, I mean, I wouldn't assume he put him over Davis, maybe you put him over Wyatt. So that is interesting. I'm looking forward to see what he can bring. And look, round 3 has to be a contributor of some kind. Between him and Loudermilk on the other side, is that the heir apparent to your bookends to it, next contract, or to Hayward when he ultimately retires? Perhaps they have to deliver, though. They cannot miss on these picks. As Colbert said, and this is Colbert's final draft, he said that this is these first 3 have to hit. And I had not heard of this guy prior to, but that's the one just of the general uncertainty, because I knew about Pickens and I knew about Pickett, but didn't know about DeMarvin Leal, and the hope being to say he can deliver, because he's going to have to, especially with that aging line. So that brings us to the 4th round. In the Steelers draft party video that will be coming up right after this video, I showed that pick live on the Heinz Field Jumbotron from Najee Harris, who looked like he was having a great time in Mexico. But the pick was a surprising one, for me at least, and it was Calvin Austin III, wide receiver from Memphis. When I looked at Calvin Austin III's highlights and read a lot about him and really liked his highlights and really liked, what I read about him. The reason why he didn't make my mock draft is because he is 5'7". He's a little guy. Now, the thoughts and the concerns of your Dre Archers of the world, this tried and true playmaker guy that, is really small. Can he handle the rigors of the league? Now, Dre Archer could not, but this guy seems to be, a little, think about some of the undersized guys that delivered the goods in this league. He feels like he could be that, like contested catches with significantly bigger corners. He's making them like a playmaker. The guy, can return kicks. He can do all this stuff. And, you just wonder, 5'7", and they list them on ESPN here as 5'8", 170. But I mean, when he gets drafted on the draft board, it said 5'7" and 3/8. So let's give him 5'8", but still 5'8", 4.32, 40-yard dash. Though I mean, he's a burner. He is a burner. So they could put him. You have to wonder what different scenarios they can put him in. Is this going to be a case similar to like a Debo, where they run, sometimes have him as a running back, sometimes have him definitely with the reverse. Steelers like to run a good reverse now and then, and I could honestly see a reverse play. Like, remember the early days of Ray McCloud, where they just handed him the ball and he just did like a reverse. Like one of the first plays that I remember seeing Ray McCloud, and they handed him a reverse and he went house. Either he took it all the way or he took it about 50 yards. I could easily see that with this guy. I like the pick. I like how they're going to, I'm curious. Well, I like the pick because I'm curious to see how they're going to use him, but I'm also curious, to see if he can stand the rigors of the NFL at a small size, because not all these small guys can. And I know it's the difference of a couple inches, but for some reason it seems the smaller guys in the league do not have that same. They don't have the same length of a career. The only one I can think of that was a smaller guy that ended up having a nice career, even though he had a lot of injuries, was like Bob Sanders, the safety for the Colts. That was a guy that I can remember that was smaller, but then he could handle the rigors of the league. So, yes, I look at, you have to feel good about what Steelers added to the offense. Now, they didn't add the depth. Offensive line wise. I do feel there's some shaky depth offensive line, especially at the tackle spots. They added some guys undrafted, but not really anybody in the draft. So you have to wonder if maybe they dip into free agency to grab, say, a tackle, some proven cheap tackle, like a swing tackle type, or maybe bring back someone like a Zach Banner, but not for the money that Zach Banner was making, or just some guy that they'll bring back, because they still have Joe Haig. They might still have Joe Haig. So maybe they still have Joe Haig, let's say. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with those tackle spots, but they did not address that. After everybody in these mocks saying, like, they have to address the O-line, they have to add to the O-line. They did add to the O-line in free agency. They added 3 interior offensive linemen. And they added Daniels, they added Mason Cole, and they re-upped J.C. Hassenauer. So they added the interior guys. You just have to wonder what they're doing about those backup tackle spots. Okay. Round 6, 208, and my only hit of my Steelers mock draft, because I knew it was going to happen, because it was the most obvious thing that was going to happen, of course, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers selected Connor Hayward, Cameron Hayward's little brother, as the future, I would guess, fullback of this team. Now, they list him as halfback, tight end. He, is a variety of spots. He runs fullback, he runs tight end, he runs special teams. He could do backup running back a la, minibus style. All types of different things that he could do. And I do feel that, that currently, there's this thing going around. The Steelers have 4 sets of brothers on the team. There's 2 Watts, 2 Haywards now, 2 Edmonds, and 2 Davises. Now, one of those is going to be a little light, because I do feel this pick here cost Derek Watt his job. Not that Derek Watt was underutilized. He was completely underutilized as a fullback, but was a killer on special teams. But I feel Hayward fills this role as the few small times where the Steelers actually run with a fullback and the special teams need, he's going to fill that. So either he makes the team out of the 6th round as Derek Watt's replacement, or maybe they toss him on the practice squad for now. And he's undersized. I mean, he's undersized for a tight end, or you just run him as your second or your third tight end. But Kevin Rader and Jay Sternberger is going to have a nice camp battle there. And I do feel Sternberger, who was a 3rd-round pick with Green Bay, I was kind of, looking forward to him. I felt like he was going to be pretty good, but he never delivered that in Green Bay, and be curious to see if he can have a second life in Pittsburgh. But yeah, that competition at tight end, especially for the 3rd spot, is going to be steep, but I don't feel Connor Hayward's going to be in that tight end competition. I do have a big feeling he's going to be in that competition between Derek Watt for fullback and special teams as well. Okay, into the 7th round. So this is pick 225 overall, Mark Robinson. This is the one I know the least about. To be honest, I went from the Steelers draft party to a wrestling event. There was no reception there whatsoever in Rostrave Rice Garden in Bell Vernon. So I didn't get to see what the Steelers 7th round picks were until about 10 o'clock. 10 plus when I got out of that event. So I don't know a ton about him, but he is somewhat undersized I guess unless he's inside linebacker, but 5'11", 235, which is fine for inside. But keep in mind, they drafted Buddy Johnson in the 4th round last year, and Buddy Johnson did nothing. I don't even know if he took the field last year hardly. I don't remember seeing him. So you have to wonder what they're doing with Buddy Johnson. And if this guy's an inside, is he an inside to take Ulysses Gilbert's job? Because Ulysses Gilbert was an inside as well. So you have to wonder what they're doing there. But I do feel that they really need some edge rusher depth behind Watt and Highsmith. I don't feel this Mark Robinson guy is kind of set up for that based on his size. They're going to have to dip into free agency, to fill that void. Because right now, I don't even know who the guys are behind Watt and Highsmith. Are there guys behind Watt and Highsmith? Is it that Stephen Tuska? Is that one of them? But yeah, I feel that they're going to have to dip into some cheap free agent depth for backup edge, because they really need it. But this guy, I don't know. He's one of those guys that, they always seem to find those like linebackers that or out of nowhere that can make things work. I mean, no, it's like he played at Ole Miss. It's not like he played at some small school or anything, but he's a one-year guy at Ole Miss, and you have to wonder if it's something that he can continue and make the leap. Because I feel like this is going to be a guy that'll be like on the practice squad, or just outright cut if he doesn't fulfill the void. But I don't think this is going to be a guy that'll make the team this year. So speaking of guys that might not make the team this year, but it'll depend on a lot of things. The last pick in the draft, Chris Oladokun, quarterback, South Dakota State. It's funny. I remember seeing his name be thrown around later in the draft, where he, like fifth, sixth round guy, because they say he is an NFL arm, and he is mobile, and you have to wonder if the unfortunate situation doesn't happen with Dwayne Haskins, if they take this quarterback here. My guess is they don't. This is Haskins. He's a mobile quarterback. Colbert has said he wanted to go into the league with go into the new year, let's say, with 4 quarterbacks. They have that currently. So don't expect Mason Rudolph to get dealt off right away. I do feel he's going to give his limited chances to make a case for himself on the team. And ultimately his battle was with this guy as to who they're going to keep. But with not like wheels mobility, Trubisky, Pickett, Mason Rudolph, kind of like, they have mobility. Even Mason Rudolph has some mobility, maybe the least of those ones. But he's not what I would call like a mobile quarterback. This Oladokun is a mobile quarterback. So that's going to be the edge for him, because they're going to want something different in the quarterback room than 3 guys that have that, semi-mobile, but, mainly pocket guys. Maybe like a rollout guys, but Mason's not really a rollout guy. He's more of a, statue guy. He's like Ben in his later years, the statue guy. So, I mean, I think Oladokun has the edge here over Rudolph. I think Rudolph really burned it after that Lions game. I think it did him in. I don't think there's a chance that he retains that job again. I can't believe how he was going from Steelers starter, and then as soon as Mitch signed, everybody was like, well, that's it for him. And now he's out. He's out. There's just no way. There's just no way he can. I don't see a scenario, barring a major injury, of course, which, let's knock on wood and hope that does not happen. But barring a major injury, I don't think there's a chance Mason Rudolph is on the team when the Steelers kick off in September. I don't think he'll be there. So, curious to know your thoughts on the Steelers draft. I have to, if I had to put a grade on it, and grades are, let's put it this way, grades are stupid. You can't really grade a draft. What did they grade the Patriots draft when they took Tom Brady without anyone knowing that Tom Brady, was going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback coming out of the 6th? That's where this proves drafts are stupid. What did they grade the Rams draft when they took Goff, or the Cleveland draft when they took Manziel, or the Denver draft when they took Tebow, in the hopes that either they were, I remember some of these guys were, maybe Tebow wasn't hyped up. That was a reach. Maybe that was a bad example. But the Manziel one, I remember people being super hyped up that he was going to be the guy, and probably gave him A+ draft grades, and he never actually lived up to that. Same thing with Baker Mayfield. They gave him all this hype up, thinking that he's going to be the guy, and now that hasn't worked out. And man, I don't like Baker Mayfield, but I feel really bad for Baker Mayfield. I don't know what Cleveland's doing exactly. I don't know if they're holding out for like more, but he's like, his jobs have really they've dried up. The only team that I feel that they could take him on and have him be, starting capable is the Seattle Seahawks, because I don't think they took a quarterback in this draft. Seahawks are the only one. Everybody else took rookie quarterbacks. So it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with Baker Mayfield. But I'm looking forward to the Steelers season. But yeah, if I had to give a grade on it, I would say B+. It's hard to really call it an A, but I love the draft. The reason why I wouldn't call it an A+ draft is because they got what they feel was the best QB out of a maybe decades long bad QB market, I guess you could say. QB draft market, and keep in mind, I can't remember the last time that only one quarterback went in the first round and no quarterbacks went in like the top 10 picks. I mean, even quarterbacks that were bad. I mean, you're talking about guys like Blaine Gabbert or, Blake Bortles, these guys, guys that were, went in the top 15 or the top 5 sometimes. Daniel Jones was not a guy that was like super, he was not some guy that was like super, surprising when he went. So there's a lot of guys that went higher than Kenny Pickett. So you have to wonder, ultimately, the grade of this draft is based on what Kenny Pickett does in this league. If Kenny Pickett is a capable starter, he's holding his own against the AFC North with their quarterbacks and Joe Burrow and Deshaun Watson and, what's the other guy? Lamar Jackson. Yeah, that's him. First of all, I don't feel that the Deshaun Watson thing is going to work out for Cleveland. I really don't. They just gave him way too much money, and there's a looming suspension going on there, and you have to wonder if he's going to be any good. I mean, I like Deshaun. I think Deshaun Watson would be good. I like his play, but you have to wonder if he's going to be as good as. I mean, let's put it this way: is anybody as good as someone making $235 million or whatever they guaranteed him, that absurd amount? No one in the league's worth that. But I feel that contract's going to blow up in their face. I could be wrong on this, but Cleveland has a tendency to have the worst case scenario play out for them a lot. But you have to wonder where Pickett fits in versus all these other AFC North quarterbacks. And if he holds his own, it was worth that pick. If he wins a Super Bowl, it was worth that pick. If he makes a few Pro Bowls, it was worth that pick, because not all these first-round draft pick quarterbacks, made a few Pro Bowls or any of them. I mean, let's look at Mitch. Mitch was the number 2 overall selection in the draft. And Mitch made a Pro Bowl with Chicago, and he led Chicago to a few playoffs. But Mitch ultimately did not work out in Chicago. And you have to wonder, with Pickett being taken first round, how much time they're going to give Mitch. But yeah, look, the Steelers said a B+ draft. Kevin Colbert's last draft, he did not make any moves. I was surprised he did not make any moves. Yeah. I thought he would make a trade, but I do I didn't mention that the Steelers did not grab a backup safety in this draft, and they signed Kazee, who was the former Cowboys, former Atlanta Falcons, as depth. And man, when's the last time the Steelers have had good safety depth? It has been a long while. So I'm pretty thrilled about pretty thrilled about that. I think Kazee, I wouldn't necessarily want Kazee as, say, as your starter, but you have Edmonds there. And look, once again, another camp battle. Because Edmonds is not making. I mean, what deals could the other teams have offered for Edmonds to agree on 1 year at 2.5? Marcus Allen is making more than him. Miles Boykin is making more than Edmonds. So Edmonds, I feel that let's say for some reason, we don't know the Steelers board, but let's say a Kyle Hamilton fell to the Steelers and the Steelers had that guy. Would Edmonds be an easy cut? Absolutely. But I do think this is a camp battle. I think Kazee has a chance to even compete with Edmonds to see, best man wins. Edmonds is going to, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out for him because he did not sign on to big money. He signed on to not so great money, really bad money. I mean, like I said, he tested free agency and other teams were interested, but what were the other teams offering? Veteran men? I don't know if the 2.5, 1 year 2.5 is low for a guy that, is durable. I mean, he's durable, but, for all these people that were Edmonds defenders, the word's out on him, clearly. Similar to the people that are saying Malik Willis would be the best quarterback in the draft. Well, why wasn't he taken until the third? That's Edmonds signing a 1 year, $2.5 million deal. And, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out for him. But look, I'm all for a camp battle, and there are some camp battles that will be going on in this draft. But yeah, man, like I said, I feel good about the Steelers class. I do feel that they are going to make some contributions, and I feel that Kenny Pickett, for all the doubts and all the uncertainty, will be pretty good in this league. He will be pretty good. But yeah, that'll do it for this review of the 2022 Steelers draft class. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below if you watch this later. But guys, thanks so much for watching. If you're new here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Like to support me on Patreon like John Bailey did. You can do so. Link is in the description below. If you'd like to buy a t-shirt, a TomWasHere t-shirt, you can do so. It's Spreadshirt, as well as links to my eBay store, Facebook page, Instagram, Clubhouse, and the Pennsylvania Autograph Collectors Association. Links are in the description below. But guys, thanks so much for watching. And be sure to tune in the next 10 minutes, actually. There's going to be a premiere of the 2022 Steelers draft party video. So make sure to check that out. And I'll be on, if anybody comments and stuff, I'll be on with you as well. But guys, thanks so much for watching. And until the next video, I will see you soon. But until then, bye everyone.